Happy birthday, Marines. Ambassador Hogstad, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, fellow Marines. It is my honor to be here in Ottawa to speak to you on the 250th anniversary of the Marine Corps. To quote my granddaughter Amber, that's a big deal, Mama. This anniversary is a time to reflect on what it means to be a Marine, part of the finest fighting force in the world. In 1775, 1 year before the Declaration of Independence was declared, the Marine Corps was born in a place called Tongue Tavern in Philadelphia. The rich history and tradition is what drove me to join the Marines. I was drawn by the beautiful dress blue uniforms, the duty stations all around the world, and the opportunity to travel to places that I would otherwise never have seen. Being Marine shaped my life and enabled me to achieve so many things that I couldn't have achieved elsewise. When Guardian Sergeant Salman approached me as potentially being the oldest Marine to attend, I immediately thought of that time-honored tradition of the Marine Corps Ball, where we just thought the first piece of cake goes to the oldest Marine, and the second to the youngest Marine. I don't want to be thought of as old, but 350 people here tonight know otherwise. It is special that the Marines share the tradition of honoring the oldest and then the youngest. In a society where the oldest are less and less revered, the Marines think differently. I've been asked to share some remarks about my time in the Marine Corps and how it has affected and impacted my life, and then share some remarks about the Marine Corps and Canada. First, allow me to give you a little bit of my background as a Marine. I joined the United States Marines on June 18, 1962, just after my 20th birthday. I was a Canadian and dropped out of high school the year before. I was inspired to join the Marines, in part by Leon Harris, who wrote Battle Flag. Harris joined the Marines at 16, lying about his age, and wrote about the lives and loves of Marines stationed in Wellington, New Zealand, before Guadalcanal. My story is really about a life made better because of the Marine Corps. I was very influenced by John F. Kennedy's speech in the House of Commons in Ottawa on May 17, 1961, that I watched on a grainy black and white television in my parents' home. In his speech, President Kennedy said, "Ours is the unity of equal independent nations, co-tenants of the same continent, heir to the same legacy, fully sovereign associates in the same endeavor to preserve freedom for ourselves and for all those who wish it." On my first visit to the Marine Corps recruiter sometime later, I saw behind the desk a photo of President Kennedy. The plaque simply said, "Commander-in-Chief." A year after JFK's historic speech, I made the decision to join the Marines after some fierce resistance from my mother. I wasn't worried about being accepted by the American people. Just being a Marine would bring me all the acceptance I needed. At the time, there was a certain mystique about the U.S. My Uncle Danny was an American who had been wounded in the Second World War. I fondly remember when he gave me his Purple Heart medal when I visited in Boston prior to joining the Marines. He would drive up to Montreal to see my mother every summer in a brand new American car. It had to be American. It was a beautiful black. Back then, my mirrors were beautiful with plenty of chrome. In an interview in Leather Neck magazine 2 years ago, I told the reporter I joined the Marines because I wanted to be a Marine. But she pointed out that was rare, and most foreigners who join the Marines do it to become a citizen. The Marine recruiter, Plattsburgh, New York, sold me on the idea of joining after several trips on my motorcycle from my home in Montreal. Plattsburgh was a border town on Lake Champlain. I was easy to convince because the Marines had a lot to offer. If you had told me about the opportunities available for duty stations class neighborhood in Montreal, and I learned to be tough. I often went to my uncle's gym where he trained boxers, including me. In the winter we played hockey on outdoor rinks. My mother practiced tough love. Money was tight, and there were 6 of us to feed. No one drove us to school. We walked or took the bus. While I romanticized the Marines reality, I was young and needed a challenge. I needed to sink my energy and frustration into something positive. I was failing in high school, I lacked discipline, and I was not living a purposeful life. I was hoping the Marines could change that. As I said goodbye to my father at the Canadian-US border, I wasn't sure I would see him again. I had a one-way ticket from Plattsburgh to Beaufort, South Carolina. From there, I was bused to Recurving Depot, Paris Island, next to the upscale resort of Hilton Head. But Paris Island was anything but a resort. Paris Island was surrounded by quicksand, crocodiles, and mosquitoes. We would go through 13 weeks of boot camp in the South Carolina summer heat. The only break would come when a yellow flag was put up, which meant the drill instructor couldn't march us outside, but that didn't stop marching us inside the barracks, away from the watchful eyes. The first leadership experience I had in the Marines was when my drill instructor at Paris Island singled me out at the back row of my platoon and told me to march the platoon to chow. Without any experience, I belted out cadence that seemed to work. Boot camp was a challenge, as tough as one could imagine. But despite fear of failure, I achieved the ultimate. I graduated as a United States Marine. The most attractive of duty stations awaited me in a 6-month tour of the Mediterranean aboard the USS Francis Marion, where we trained and practiced war games, often with other NATO members. That was one of my many duty stations I had in the Marine Corps that taught me the valuable lessons that I would later use in my business career. That wasn't an experience unique to me. Fred Smith, the founder of FedEx, often said he received his business degree from the Marines. He revolutionized the express delivery system as we know it. He served 2 terms in Afghanistan and was wounded. I felt the same way, but there's more lessons for my life in my business career. Chase like accountability, setting goals, being disciplined, showing courage, and doing more with less. At university, I received a degree. In the Marines, I learned how to get things done. I learned the resource finance business by fostering relationships, what I learned to do in the Marines, by teamwork, camaraderie. I learned to set simple goals because the Marines do that every day. I helped build a major hospital foundation from scratch in Vancouver with principles that I learned in the Marines. That foundation continues to raise $100 million each year. When I lost half my capital in an underwriter for an oil and gas company, I turned to my Marine Corps training and told me to stay this course, be patient, and make careful decisions. I fought in Vietnam in 1965 as an 81mm forward observer and later as a section leader. My time there was psychological warfare. I went to 190 pounds and returned to 140. We carried and operated 81mm in the jungle under sweltering heat and humidity, all the time barely seeing the enemy until it was almost too late. But I came back and 58,200 did. What makes it even worse was how we were treated feedback. The anti-war sentiment was so public when we returned that most of us went underground, and we didn't talk about our time in Vietnam. Despite this, I was proud to be a Marine, and ultimately ended up on one of the most prestigious duty stations in the Marine Corps, Pearl Harbor. Hawaii was a magical place that allowed me to heal after the Vietnam War. In total, I spent 4 years and 4 months in active duty, another year and 8 months in the reserve. We built and protected what became the 2nd largest airport in Vietnam. I wouldn't fly commercially for 9 years, but I became a pilot myself. After female instructor yelled at me and said, "You can do this. You're a Marine." I still fly, often flying my Cirrus SR-20 from Vancouver to Tofino. Now a word about Canada and the Marines. It has been said that over 20,000 Marines served in the Vietnam War, and some estimates say 189. My own senior drill instructor, Sergeant Wilson, came from Windsor, Ontario. From the first time I joined the Marines, my American friends treated me as one of them. Except one day, I sat in uniform in the nosebleed section of Madison Square Garden, watching a game between the New York Rangers and the Montreal Canadiens. Someone shouted, "Jeffrey Arnold, get off the ice," which was directed at the Canadian player who invented the slap shot, Bernard Jeffrey Arnold. The Marines are a brotherhood, and will always be. That sense of brotherhood crosses borders. Going through U.S. Customs recently, a border guard saw my Marine Corps ball cap, and in that brief moment we shared our units and our lives as Marines. We are forever bound by the title of Marine. As a Dire Straits song, Brothers in Arms says, through these fields of destruction, baptisms of fire, I've witnessed your suffering as the battles reach higher. Though we were hurt so bad, in the fear and alarm, you did not desert me, my brothers in arms. On an occasion such as this, it's a time to reflect on what it means to be a Marine. Those who wore this uniform, the few, the proud, being a deep sense of what it means to be part of the finest fighting force in the world. They will be forever bound by the title of Marine. Thank you for sharing this 250th anniversary ball with me. Semper Fi.
Thank you, Mr. Salman. It is customary in the Marine Corps for the host to present the guest speaker with a small memento of appreciation. The detachment commander will now make that presentation.
Now, before I get this to you, sir, I did want to say something. Thank you for being our oldest Marine, even though you didn't have a choice in that saying. Thank you for being our guest speaker, and thank you for your service.